Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, entitled Sister Wants Me to House My Niece for Free During Her College. After that, give us a biological grandkid and it better be a male. And after that, force me to take a useless sports physical? I'll make sure I fail it. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get any grandbabies. But I deserve them! So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Entitled Sister Wants Me to House My Niece for Free During Her College. My niece had to move back in with her mother after the lockdown started. She lost her job and all her classes were online. Her lease was month to month, so she didn't have to worry about breaking her lease. Recently, the schools have reopened and she has started attending classes again. Problem is, her apartment, which was walking distance from her university, is now rented. Parking in the area sucks, and it's an hour one way from her mother's house on public transit. I will say now that my niece is also incredibly spoiled and is taking classes for a degree with no practical benefits. By this, I mean that it will in no way help her with a career path, nor are they necessary courses for further education. Got a call from my sister asking if my niece could live with me because I live alone in a 2-bedroom house and I'm also a 15-minute bus trip away from her uni. I said no for several reasons. 1. I work nights and need to sleep during the day. My niece is a very loud young lady and doesn't understand the concept of an indoor voice. Last time she stayed in the same home as me, I was sleep deprived because of her practically yelling on her phone, and it affected how I did my job, resulting in a write-up. 2. My niece is also a very messy person. I helped with the move out and the memory makes me shudder. Some of the unwashed dishes in the sink were tossed because they were beyond cleaning. She tried to just sit on random crap and text her friends and scroll TikTok. I had to take her phone and lock it in the glove box for the U-Haul we rented to get her to help me move. My sister still calls me a jerk for doing this. 3. While I may have a 2-bedroom home, the second room is my office/work room. I've been in the process of making wire-wrapped necklaces to sell online for extra income, and I need the area as a workspace. It's also my library, for lack of a better word. I keep my collection of novels on bookshelves in there, and a comfy old recliner for reading in. 4. My niece is allergic to cats, and I have 3. My sister seems to think that I can keep them all either in my bedroom or locked up in the basement for the school year. Forget that. 5. And this is the big one. My older sister is under the belief that my niece wouldn't have to help out with household expenses or be expected to cook for herself. She also thinks that my niece shouldn't have to get a job while in school to focus on her studies. Tried to pull the "we're family and we should help each other out" card. But that didn't count for crap when my step-siblings nearly made me homeless after my stepdad passed and gave me 30 days to find a new place for me and my dog. Dog-friendly buildings where I live are hard to find. The only way I would agree for my niece to live with me is that she would give me $250 a month to help cover utilities and part of the internet. Figured that is a steal, considering a cheap place around her school is more than double, even triple that, plus utilities, and she could use the garage for her car for free. But I would also expect her to buy her own food and clean up after herself, like doing her own laundry, keeping her room clean, and putting dishes at least in the sink, if not the dishwasher. Would not expect her to cut the grass or shovel snow. The thought of even asking her to do this already gives me a headache. Now I'm getting texts from both my sisters telling me that I'm a horrible person and should open my home to this, that it's unreasonable to expect a 19-year-old to spend 2 hours on the bus every day and yada yada. Part of me feels guilty because I could move my office and workspace down into my basement. Can't be a living space due to a lack of windows, but I can't afford the expenses of a second person in my home without them chipping in for the bills, nor will I lock my cats away in their room. Edit. Should have been more clear. I don't have plans on letting her live with me. The $250 thing I mentioned was more of a what-if situation that I'm not entertaining. This post was more of a rant than anything else, but I am appreciative of the advice and the validation on my choice, even though this wasn't meant to be an "Am I the Jerk" post. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let your niece live with you or not? Please let us know. Give us a biological grandkid, and it better be a male. My brother and my sister-in-law have been married for 6 years. I love them both dearly. They adopted a girl about a year ago. My parents were happy about this too, at first. They got really angry when my brother and sister-in-law announced recently that their daughter would be their only child and they do not want biological kids. My mom and dad lost their crap. They told my brother he had to get my sister-in-law pregnant. He was the family's male heir, and he would have to have a biological son to carry forward the family name. This makes no sense to me, nor my bro and sister-in-law. It's not as if we're a family of European royalty. Who gives a hoot about the family name in this day and age? Well, my parents do apparently. They've been berating my brother and guilt-tripping my sister-in-law, making her feel like she's taking something away from our family. On one occasion, they actually suggested that my brother leave my sister-in-law if she didn't want to get pregnant and have a son with another woman. What's even worse is that they've stopped paying attention to my niece. Earlier, they would call and talk to her almost every day, but ever since they were told about my bro and sister-in-law's decision, they've stopped calling her. This upsets me and has deeply saddened my bro and sister-in-law. The kid is 3 years old and doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. Last month, brother told me that mom and dad had called him and they had talked about something unrelated. When he asked if they wanted to talk to their granddaughter, they said they had talked to their real grandchild when my brother came to his senses and decided to give them one. I was angrier than I've been in a long time. I called my parents and unloaded on them. I told them how selfish and cruel they were being, and how dare they take out their anger on my niece, along with a lot of other things I can't even remember. My mom started crying as she's not used to being yelled at. I used some very harsh words, but I just can't believe they're being so cruel towards someone so innocent. After that, my parents have tried to rally our relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, and our grandparents to gang up on my brother and sister-in-law to pressure them into having a biological child, obviously male. However, their plan has failed miserably. Most of the relatives told them that they're being crazy. Cousins repeated some of the things that I had said to them. Uncles and aunts told them even if they did want a biological grandson, there was no excuse for the way that they were treating my niece. Even my grandparents, who are quite old-fashioned, admonished them for their behavior towards my niece. My brother has banned them from his home. I've banned them from mine. This ban will stay in place until they start treating my niece like their granddaughter, i.e. the way she deserves to be treated. I feel like my grandparents shunning my niece hurts even more because when she first became a part of the family, they appeared to love her. They would speak to her on the phone, play with her when they visited. But all of that stopped when they found out that my brother and sister-in-law won't be having any biological kids. They just rejected her for no fault of her own. Force me to take a useless sports physical? I'll make sure I fail it. Some background. In high school, I went to an academic magnet school. Essentially, it was a public school ran like a private school. You had to have certain test scores to get bus transportation, since it was for the whole county. Way stricter dress code than all of the other schools in the district, and they were able to have a ton of extra rules because it was a choice school. Now, I was the first graduating class. I was there the first year it opened. At that time, it was 5th through 9th grade, and I started as a freshman. The second year, they had completed the elementary wing, and so it was K through 10. They added some grades until my senior year when it was finally K through 12. As the school grew, it continued to add more policies. My sophomore year, the school's second year of being open, they began a new policy where all students 7th grade and above had to be on a sports team everywhere. I thought this was really stupid. I hated it. I'm not an athlete. I was in other clubs and I was getting increasingly involved with my church. Being the mature 16-year-old I was, my initial plan was to join a team and have a bad attitude, like an awfully bad attitude, so that no one would have any fun and this would prove to the school how awful this rule was. Instead, for all the lazy kids like me, they started a school walking team. It wasn't power walking, just regular walking. We just had to walk around the neighborhood for about 45 minutes 3 times a week after school. I was fine with this. I didn't mind walking around. Of course, there was an adult coach, but since the whole thing was ridiculous anyways, my friends and I declared ourselves co-captains. This mostly consisted in telling the middle schoolers to walk faster. No one else considered us co-captains, but we did. And that's all that mattered to us since it was all a joke anyways. I did that my sophomore and junior years, but fast forward to my senior year. I was 18, working part-time about 15 to 20 hours a week. I was super involved in my church, and my family was a chaotic mess of dysfunction that traumatized me in numerous ways. They finally enforced the state law that everyone on a sports team has to have an annual physical on file. I didn't really bother with this since it wasn't a real sport anyways. Eventually, they came to me and said that it was so late in the season that even if I got a physical, I would need to pick a different sport in the winter or spring. Walking team was a fall sport. I was essentially just like, forget this. I had enough other things in my life to deal with, and I didn't want to put up with this crap anymore. I decided to do exactly what they said and get the physical. I also decided I would do my best to fail it. So eventually I went and saw a doctor. It's important to note that I didn't have a primary care doctor at the time. That's why I didn't get a physical before then. So I just went to some little walk-in clinic and I told them that I needed a sports physical. I didn't tell them what the sport was. Now, as I was filling out the patient history form, I answered truthfully. I did not lie, but I didn't provide any context. So I checked yes to a history of asthma, mostly from when I was a kid, severe seasonal allergies, and a history of seizures. See, when I was 13, I had a couple dozen seizures in a day or two. No one knew what was going on, and eventually I was diagnosed with epilepsy, specifically having absent seizures. Since then, I had been taking anticonvulsants every day. As far as I'm aware, even 20 years after that initial episode, I'm not sure I've had a full-blown seizure since then. It's literally the mildest case of epilepsy I've ever heard of. The doctor does a quick physical exam, mostly vitals and similar things. As she looks at my patient history form, she asks about the seizures. I explained that I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I take anticonvulsants, and I have a neurologist I see about once or twice a year. She says, "Well, I can't pass you until I hear from your neurologist." I basically hopped out of the chair, happily said thank you, and walked out. I never did contact the neurologist. Instead, I just gave the paperwork to the school. And that's how I, a relatively healthy 18-year-old, got medically disqualified from the school walking team. Speaking of sports, do you play any sports? And if so, which ones? Please let us know. I get my exercise when I go shopping. Grandpa gives Karen a taste of her own medicine. This all took place a long time ago when I was about 17 years old. Let's meet the cast. We've got me, we've got awesome grandfather, we've got nephew, and we've got Karen. Memory is a little fuzzy, as this took place over 20 years ago, so may not be verbatim. This was at a time my parents were having some troubles, so I wound up staying on my grandfather's farm. Love that old man so much and really miss him. God rest his soul. He passed on about 5 years ago. That morning after breakfast, Grandma told us the house larder was getting a little low and asked us to go to the store to pick up a few things. So, after morning chores were done and the animals were fed, we packed up into Grandpa's truck and headed into town. At this time, I was dealing with yet-to-be-diagnosed emotional distress due to family issues and PTSD. Now, I'm dressed in a pink top, torn jeans, and work boots from living on the farm, so I wouldn't ruin my good shoes in the mud and animal excrement. There was no possible way I could be mistaken for an employee of the store, but you know Karens. While in the store, Grandpa sent me off to a couple aisles to grab a couple things and bring them to him, which I did without thinking about it. That's when the Karen of the story entered, without an excuse me, or any other word. She marches up to me right in front of my grandpa and says, "When you're done helping this old man with his shopping, I want you to help me with mine." Was all I was able to get out before she yelled, "You young people need to learn your place. Now you can forget this old man and help me with my shopping." That's when Grandpa stepped between us. "This is my granddaughter, miss, and we are shopping, so kindly toddle off and go ask an employee for help." "Ugh!" from the Karen, who actually reached around my grandpa, grabbed my arm, and yanked me towards her. "She's my help now, and you can buzz off." That's when my PTSD kicked in. I yanked my arm out of her grasp, pushed her away, and yelled, "Get away from me!" She kept yelling, "You will help me now, jerk. I don't care what you want." Then Grandpa lost it and bopped her upside the head. "You get away from her right now." Grandpa roared at her so loud the entire store heard it. Karen finally got her head together as several employees came racing into the aisle to see what all the yelling was about. They were greeted with the sight of my grandpa looming menacingly over Karen, my cousin holding me and comforting me, and Karen now trying to get up off the floor and screeching about calling the cops and suing the store. When the manager arrived, the look on his face said another small piece of his soul died just then. Then he recognized the Karen. He tried to say something to Karen, but she was yelling and screeching so much she just wasn't about to listen to anyone. Grandpa put a stop to that right quick. "Silence!" he roared at Karen. "Not another word." Karen fell silent instantly. Something about Grandpa said he meant business and would brook no arguments from her. But that didn't stop her from staring daggers at everyone. The manager looked at Karen for a moment, then said, "Do you remember the last little talk we had? Forget that there are security cameras in the store? Security cameras were a new feature added by head office and were bulky, plainly obvious pieces of equipment back then. Karen eyed Grandpa but nodded. "Do you remember what I said would happen if you did this very thing to another customer?" Karen went white as a sheet, but she nodded. "Then I have no choice but to ban you from the store and arrange a ban from all associated stores as well, and call the police if these people want to press charges. And I'll remind you, we do have cameras in the store and several witnesses." Grandpa asked me if I wanted to press charges. I just shook my head no. All I wanted was to crawl into Grandma's lap for a while until I felt better. Grandpa told the manager no, charges won't be necessary. The ban from this and several other stores will be more than sufficient. The manager did offer to compensate us for having to deal with her, but Grandpa had a better and more yummy idea. Grandpa made him a counteroffer. Instead of compensation, let us have a go at your cake selection. That will be more than enough. Needless to say, we went home with a chocolate truffle cake. Yummy. Am I the jerk for leaving my boyfriend's family's lunch because I was being asked to change my clothes? Sometime last year, I stayed at my boyfriend's, now ex, house for the night. I just went over to hang out and I was going to leave the next day. I didn't think there were any plans for the next day. After I woke up, his mom lets me know that they're having a big family gathering and my boyfriend says I should stay. That's fine with me. I was happy to stay. I attended quite a few of their family events, and while I was usually anxious, I was never particularly uncomfortable. Everything was fine until his mom brought up the fact that her dad was going to come. I'd never met him before, and I was told he was very traditional. This was apparently going to be an issue because I was wearing shorts, and my boyfriend and his mother both told me I needed to change. Since I had no clothes, because I was just staying for the night and going home, I'd have to wear his mother's clothes. I explained to them that while I respect his granddad's traditional values, I didn't feel comfortable with that dictating what I could wear. If I knew about it in advance, I probably would have worn longer pants to save the drama, but I didn't get that chance. His mother explained to me that there was a good chance her dad would confront me about my clothes, and even after I explained that that didn't bother me, she still insisted that I change. I took my boyfriend aside and explained to him that I wasn't comfortable with what was happening. It also affected me more than it usually would because I knew his mother didn't like me. She always had something critical to say about me, whether it was about my makeup, my clothes, my personality, my life/university choices, or my housing situation. He still sided with his mother and said that I should just change to avoid confrontation with her. His sister came first, and after she found out about what was going on, she tried to explain to both of them that it shouldn't be an issue, and if I wasn't bothered, then everyone should accept that. That didn't change anyone's mind. More family members started coming, and I got overwhelmed with trying to say hello to everyone, introducing themselves to me, while I still had two people trying to get me to leave to get changed. I even met the grandfather, who didn't say anything to me, but that didn't change their minds. I eventually decided it would just be better if I left, since neither me nor them were going to change our minds, and the whole situation was overwhelming and making me anxious. My boyfriend didn't walk me out or really talk to me for the rest of the day. He never understood why I was upset. I called my friend after I left, and she was fully on my side. But I've had mixed reactions with other people, with some people saying I should have just changed to avoid all of the fuss. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you have changed like the mother and boyfriend wanted you to or not? Please let us know. I smell some strong Norman Bates vibes. Sounds like you dodged a bullet, sweetie. Do you have any idea who I am? So this was years ago, and we'll need a little setup. I'll try to make it so I can't be so easily identified, but we'll also try to give enough detail that can be checked up on as it involves a reasonably famous individual. Therefore, I have no doubt people may be skeptical. So, for years I lived in Kennebunkport in Maine, USA. It's very much a holiday town and gets busy in the summer. Now, as the summer period starts, a very special guest would arrive, as they had a holiday home in the northern end of town on a small peninsula. The 41st President of the United States, the late George Bush Sr. The flags and banners used to come out. Welcome back, Mr. President. There were plenty of restaurants in the town, many owned by the same company, and the president used to dine with us a lot. So, one day I was wiping down the bar. It was a quiet day, and we only had a few people dining. Behind the bar is a huge fish tank, so you can see through the tank to the front door. I saw a lady walking across the drive, well-dressed and straightening her skirt. I placed the cleaning stuff under the bar and awaited the lady. Me. May I help you? Karen. I hope so. Is the order ready? Me. I'm not aware of any order, but I'll have a check with the kitchen. Can I take your name? Karen. You don't even know who I am? What an embarrassment. She would go on to tell me that she was here for an order of oysters and clams for the presidential compound. Now, this wasn't unusual. The president often got complimentary oysters whenever he would dine with us. Plus, we would often send food up to the compound, but it was never this lady and never a sole person who would pick it up. Certainly not on foot, and we knew the cars they used. I could not get a single word in. She berated me for a while. I'll have your job. Or, is this the disrespectful shambolic service that you always provide? And the usual crap. Then she spies the gentleman behind me, full suit, very smart, who has come to see what the commotion was all about. Karen flicks her head his way and utters, "You, come here." Karen went into her rant to be stopped 10 seconds in as the man in the suit gestured for her to come through into the back dining area. Suited man. "Madam, will you just step this way, please, and we can resolve this? Now, I don't work here, but..." On the other side of the wall, she saw George Bush, Barbara Bush, a few guests who were dining with us. I should mention, though you probably know, ex-presidents who were in office before 1997 were provided Secret Service agents to protect them and their family for life. Obama brought this back in making George W. Bush the first president to have lifelong security since 1997. One of President Bush's agents was sat in the corner. The other one was the well-dressed man by Karen's side, whom she had incorrectly assumed was my manager. Her face went white and she ran. Sort of, she had heels on. She stumbled and headbutted the front door before stumbling over the driveway like a newborn deer trying to walk for the first time. The president's staff just let her go, simply asking for a copy of the CCTV before they left. According to one of my bosses, the lady was picked up by the sheriff's department, charged and fined a few months later. I think there was some sort of fraud charges. I had nothing to do with it after she ran out. Our managers dealt with most of it. Like I said, a larger company owned most restaurants in town. We only got snippets. Apparently, attempting to steal products and defraud a business by way of claiming to work for an ex-president of the United States is frowned upon in Maine. So yeah, she didn't work on the president's team. She worked at Walmart in a town called Wells up the coast. Just wanted to try her luck and had probably heard that the president dined here when he was in town. I believe she lost her job there and was arrested and fined a few months later. Am I the jerk for not changing our cat's name? I, 41 female, and my husband, 50 male, have 3 kids. My oldest and youngest are very like me, easygoing and prefer to avoid arguments. My husband and my middle child, 16 female, seem to thrive on arguing. I try to go the pick your battle route. If it's important, fight for it. If it's not, let it go. My husband and her argue constantly. Ever since our previous cat died, my daughter had been wanting a new one. However, my husband and I both work 60 to 70 hours a week and the kids at school, so I felt it was too much responsibility right then. But since the craziness started, the kids went to online learning for the rest of the school year, and my husband is working from home, so we started considering it. This last week, a friend of my daughter's was told that they had to find homes for their cats. They live in the country and had several, most under a year old. We agreed to meet one to see what we think. We all instantly fell in love with this 6-month-old calico. However, since my husband and I are both still working long hours, his is just from home, but he's still busy. I told my daughter it would be her responsibility to take care of her. She agreed. The name the cat had already been given was Turtle. Not my favorite name for a cat, but my daughter liked it, so I was fine with it. However, my husband hates the name. He decided Paisley was a better name. I actually like this name somewhat better. I think if he would have went to my daughter and said, "How about Paisley for a name?" I think she might have gone for it and there would be no issue. Instead, he said, "Turtle is a stupid name. Her name is Paisley." That led to them arguing. Finally, I just got them to agree to just each calling her what they want. She's a cat. She doesn't care. And actually, all I've heard anyone call her is Kitty. So then Friday, I call to make her a vet appointment. When the vet asks her name, I say Turtle. Vet laughs, says okay, cat named Turtle, got it. My husband heard this, and when I hung up, he stated I'm disrespecting him by taking her side. He said I'm letting a kid make the rules and insisted I change the name with the vet. I feel we told her the cat was her responsibility, and with that, I feel she had a right to her choice of name. I refused to change the name with the vet. Now he's been mad at me for 2 days. Am I the jerk for not taking his side and changing the name? Entitled Mom wouldn't give me my diploma because I didn't get her a rose. I had a weird upbringing that I've tried to explain a couple times, but it's so complicated. I couldn't get it concise enough and I had to erase it. I think I'll just stick to this one story for now, and if you want to hear more about what my family believed, you can ask me any questions you have and I can answer them in the comments. Even so, this is going to be a long, crazy story, so brace yourself. My mom was what's known as a covert narcissist. That's where they are super sweet and wonderful whenever someone else is around, but at home, their true colors rip through their mask and they demand that the world revolve around them. Part of what we believed required our family to have as many kids as possible, and as the oldest daughter, it was my job to take care of them all. I meal planned, cooked, cleaned, and even homeschooled my youngest siblings, all while trying to get through my own school books by myself. My mom wouldn't let me study unless all the other housework was done first. When it came time for me to graduate high school, our church organized a group of us homeschooled kids who were all graduating at the same time and put together a ceremony like the ones regular schools have. I was very involved for the first few months. I illustrated a cookbook we were selling and went to all the fundraisers, but after a while, I decided I didn't agree with a lot of what the group was doing and asked my parents if I could pull out of the project and just have a small ceremony at home, like we had always talked about. They both heard my reasons and agreed, saying they were proud of my maturity and willingness to stand alone for what was right. The day of the graduation came, and we went to support our friends. During the ceremony, each student gave their mother a rose and a hug on stage, and it was very sweet. I had no reason to believe there was anything wrong until we got home. My mom immediately called me back into her room. My dad was standing there, but he wasn't really the leader in our house, so he didn't say anything the whole time. My mom told me she was humiliated when she saw all the other mothers get roses and said I cheated her out of the honor and recognition she deserved for teaching me everything I know. Her exact words were, "A graduation ceremony is not about the students, it's about the teachers and how hard they worked to get those students where they are today." I didn't dare contradict her, but in my head I was thinking, what are you talking about? You haven't been my teacher since I was 11. She would always just buy me books, and that was it. I had to find time to read them, take tests, and grade myself all on my own. She would even make me take tests over and over until I got an A. With math, that was a lot of trying and failing. I didn't even know the real cutoff for failing a test was a D until I got married and moved out. At the time of this conversation, I still had a couple chapters in my last math book I needed to finish, but a lot of my other homeschool friends said they had the same thing and it was normal. My mom finished by saying, "I just looked at your math book and you still have 2 chapters left to go, so you haven't even earned this yet. Since you denied me the honor I deserved tonight, I will be withholding your diploma also. You don't even need it since you won't be going to college. Just finish your book and you will just be done with school." I tried to remind her that she agreed to let me sit out of the graduation ceremony, but she said, "I know I did, but when I saw how all the other mothers were being honored like that, I realized that wasn't your decision to make, and I felt robbed. It wasn't about you. It was about me as both your mother and your teacher." I asked her to at least not tell anyone that I didn't have a diploma, and she said what she always said when I asked that kind of thing. "If you don't want people to know what you did, don't do it." She dismissed me, and I ran to my room and cried. I was embarrassed and worried about what my friends would think if they found out. But I couldn't stay in my room for very long because my mom soon noticed I was gone and called me back downstairs to make dinner. She never approved of anyone being emotional. I went the next 12 years carefully guarding my secret that I didn't have a diploma, and even my husband didn't know until one day my dad called me. He and my mom had gotten a divorce when she left him and all my siblings for another man that year. After the drama settled, the whole family was a lot happier without my mom around, and my dad had been going through all the old files, getting everything in order for their new, free life when he found something he thought I would like to have. It was my diploma and my high school transcript. He sent me a picture of them both, and I just broke down crying right there on the phone. He apologized for not standing up for me back then, and I told him I understood and forgave him. My mom mistreated him too, and he was just trying to get through life like all of us. He couldn't accept that. He said, as my dad, it was his job to protect me, and he failed. We had a long talk about all the things my mom did to me, and I was surprised to hear that my dad was largely unaware of most of them. He got really angry on the phone and kept apologizing for not being more aware and present in my life. He was in the military, so he was gone a lot. It was a wonderful talk, and we both cried a ton. He sent me the diploma and the transcript in the mail, and I cried again when I finally held them in my hands. I used them to get a job last year at a daycare, and it felt amazing. Please come watch this video next, you will love it. And join as a channel member today, and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.